We're on page 17. In your paper pack, you'll find this sheet. Let's trim off that trim piece. Let's flip this over. On the back side, you will see this. Let's just turn our paper like this, measure over 7¼ inches, and cut. Put the larger piece in our reserves for now. Measure over 5¼ inches and cut. Stick this in your reserves. Measure over 4 5/16 and cut. Stick this trim piece in our reserves. Let's flip this over. Make sure that it fits. Let's apply score tape to the back of this and mount it in our book. So cut a piece of cardstock or your manila file folders to 5¼ inches wide to 2½ inches tall there. And all I did was take one of my folders and trim off the strip and cut it down if you're using file folders. Let's get our punches and dies. Those of you using the punches, you can use either your 1/2 inch or your deep edge. The die I'm using is one of my favorites. It's out of the Delicate Borders Basic, and it's that one. And I'm just going to center this from side to side and run that through my die cutter. Okay, I'm going to apply glue to the back of this. Here is where my pocket meets, and I'm going to slide something back there so you can see what I'm doing here. Anyway, we're just going to mount this like we did before. You won't want to use your pretty paper for your thing. You'll want to use some sort of scratch piece to get back behind there so you don't glue your paper together. But match up your sides with your print up here and glue that down. And I'll show you what mine looks like. So I have mine on there. Let's grab our paper that we're going to use right here. In your journaling card, you'll find the larger one that has this on the back. Now, since us die cutters, we do have that curve we're actually going to use out of our classic borders. Let's grab this one with the single blade that curves, and we're just going to center that from side to side and run that through our die cutters. If you have a straight across, what you will do is place this down and get a pencil and try to center where your rose is still on the page, and you will make a pencil mark on each side with your pencil and trim that so that it will fit across. And then what you will do is do the same thing down here. Make a pencil mark how far it needs to come down and trim that. So I'm going to run mine through the die cutter. I've got mine cut, so now I'm just going to kind of measure up where that is, take my pencil, and we'll do just like the people who punched by making a mark on either side and trimming this, even the bottom, to fit. I've got mine all trimmed up. I'm just going to apply my glue and glue that down. I've got mine glued down in my chipboard pieces. I've got this. Apply a little glue down here and just stick that right over to the side. And I'm going to do mine slightly at a slant. And then I'm going to make a small bow. I'll just add a little glue right here and glue that down, and then I'll just trim these up a bit. In your chipboard pieces, you will find this small one. It's the one with the dark background. I'm just going to add some glue and glue that right here. Page 17 is complete. Let's move on to page 18. Page 18, in your reserves you will find this piece. Measure over 5¼ inches and cut. And if you notice, I had this upside down when I was cutting, and that is so that I can reserve this in case I want to cut this out, or one of these. So let's put the larger one back in our reserves, and we can flip this right back over. Grab some leaves and let's apply glue to the back and glue that down. Now I'm not going to add glue yet to underneath these leaves because we are going to grab this chipboard piece and slide that slightly right underneath like that, and we will glue that down. And then I have a flat style flower that will go right there. I've got a second one that I'm going to glue down right here. As soon as you've got yours like that, this page is complete. We'll flip it over, put our score tape on the back, and mount that in our book. Page 18 is complete. In your paper pack, you'll find this sheet. Whoops, I'm sticking. Time to clean my countertop. On the back it looks like this. Let's trim off this top piece. Okay, flip it over. Let's turn this upside down. Measure over 7¼ inches and cut. Stick this in your reserves. Measure over 5¼ inches and cut, and then measure over again 5¼ inches and cut. Let's flip them over. This one we're going to reserve for page 20, so let's set that off to the side. Okay, for people using file folders, we are already bent over. What we need to do is measure over 4⅛ inch and cut. And people just using cardstock, I will give you your complete measurements in just a moment. Stick the side pieces off in our reserve. So this is what you should have. Let's turn that. Measure over 6⅛ inch and cut. Those of you using regular cardstock, cut a piece that is 8¼ inches by 6⅛ inch, and then you will just score it and fold it in half. In your journaling cards, you will find these two small ones. On the back side of this looks like this. And then the second one is this one, and the back side looks like that. We need to ink around the edges with our brown on this one. So let's do that. So I did ink around my edges. I kind of got crazy with my brown and went a little more thicker than I wanted to, but I think that this will look just fine. So what we want to do is we will be applying glue to the back of this and on this side. And when we mount this, make sure that you have a border of your cardstock showing at the top and the side. And also, when you place this one, you will have a border in between of your cardstock, these two, and also down around here. And once you've got this placed, you know where it's supposed to be, apply your glue, and let's mount that. And my opening for this is off to the right. I've got mine down. And now all I'm going to do is close this up, flip it over to the back side, and I'm going to apply glue just to the bottom, the top, and where it opens is where I am going to apply that glue. But I'm not going to apply glue here, so that leaves a little pocket for me. And then I'm just going to center this and place it down. And you'll definitely want to open this up and get that down. Oop, got crazy with glue too. So yours should look like that. Let's open it up and find our paper for the inside. In your reserves, you will find this long strip. It's 12 inches long. On the back, it looks like this. Measure over 4 inches and cut. Set this off to the side here. Measure over 6 inches and cut that right in half. Let's center these on each side and glue those down. With this, measure over 4 inches and cut. Just flip that right on over, and this is just going to be a real lightweight belly band. And I'm going to put it lower. Just get enough for the side so you can still slip in something back behind. And spread it off to the side. Cut 2 pieces of ribbon, and I think these are about 7.5. And I think I'll glue the back one on first. Right around there. And then it's kind of easier to get this one on there straight. Your chipboard pieces, you will find one of these. I'm just going to put a little glue here. Place it down. I think I'll tie these up. And this is complete. We can flip it over, apply our score tape on the back, and glue that down. Page 19 is complete. Let's move on to page 20. Page 20 we're going to leave alone, leave it open so that we can just plant a nice picture there. Flip this over, score tape around the back, 1 down the middle, 2 on either side, and mount this in our book. We're now on to page 21. Page 21. Excuse me, in our paper pack we will find this print on the back. It looks like this. Let's trim off that trim piece. I'm going to turn it so I'm looking at it like this. Measure over 7.25 inches and cut. Stick this in reserves. Measure over 5.25 inches and cut. In my 49th and Market, I have a couple of their leaves, and I'm going to glue that one down, right like that. The other one gets glued down like that. And I'm going to use this one right here. And I'm going to put one of my smaller ones right up here. So as soon as I get mine glued down, I'll show you what mine looks like. Got mine all glued down, and one thing I like to do sometimes when I have leaves that drape down like that is I won't put glue underneath here, so I can still slide a photograph back underneath if I need to, and that can frame around the corner of the photograph. Let's flip this over, apply score tape around the back like we have been, 1 down the middle, 2 short ones, and mount this in our book. Page 21 is complete. In our reserves, we will find this sheet. Let's measure over 5.25 inches and cut. Put the other piece, the larger piece, in our reserves. Measure over measure over 4 5/16 and cut. We're going to apply score tape to the back of this and mount this in our book. I'm going to set this off to the side and find our paper. In our reserves, we will find this sheet. On the back, it's green. So I'm going to turn mine like this. Measure over 2 3/4 inches and cut. Now measure over 5.25 inches and cut. Let's apply glue to this and mount that in our book. Okay, we're not going to do a trim style there, but you will find this in your reserves on the back. It looks like that. We're just going to measure over 5 1/4 inches and cut. Let's apply glue and glue that right down like that. In your chipboard pieces, you will find this. I'm just going to apply some glue right here in the middle. And I'm going to place this so it's slightly higher than the edge of my paper. Make a small bow. Whoops, I'm sticking everywhere. This usually means it's time to do a little cleaning here. And place that down. This page is complete. We are on page, what page are we on? 23. In your reserves, you will find this sheet on the back. It looks like this. Measure over 5 1/4 inches and cut. Place this in reserves for now. Measure over 4 5/16 of an inch and cut. Let's put our score tape on the back and mount that in our book. I got mine in. I'm going to set this off to the side for a moment. In your reserves, you will find this piece. It's a short piece. Now this should be about 5 1/4, and it is wide, and it's just a hair under, it's 2 7/8 long. We do need to trim this down. So measure over 2 3/4 of an inch and cut. Let's apply glue to the back of this and mount this right on our pocket. Okay, those of you that are using the punches, we're going to do the same exact thing. So you'll want to use your 1/2 inch punch. Cut a piece of cardstock for you. You would be 5 1/4 inch by 1 1/16 of an inch. And then you will line it up. If you remember, for instance, you'll line your paper up at the edge between the two, oops, I'm still locked down here. Between, like, for instance, here are 2 flowers, just right in there, and then you will punch. And then when you turn this over to match up, make sure you just flip it over like that and put it in the same spot. Those of us that are die cutting, cut a piece that is 5 1/4 inches by 2 inches. Okay, the 2 dies that I am using is out of the Delicate Borders Basics. And I've got glue just all over me. I gotta go wash my hands. I've got a mess over here. This one, and then this one. And we're just gonna center that side to side. Run that through our die cutter. If you are using the punches, all you're going to do is glue that down. And remember, sliding a piece of cardstock back in the pocket behind will eliminate getting glue in between and gluing your thing down. Those of us that did some die cutting will do the same thing. We'll just glue ours right on down. In our chipboard pieces, we will find that. Let's just add a little glue here and glue that down. This page is complete. We are now on page 24. Page 24. We are moving right along in this tutorial. In your paper pack, you will find another one of these sheets. On the back, it's this. Trim off this top part and then measure over 5 1/4 inches and cut. And we're going to do something a little different on this page. Stick your larger piece in your reserves. Measure over 7 1/4 inches and cut. The smaller piece goes in our reserves. Let's get out some cardstock. If you are using file folders, the first thing we want to do is, if you have this little edge here, let's straighten up our edge by trimming just straight down this way. I trimmed off to get a straight edge. Now, if you are just using cardstock, at this point you are going to cut a piece that is 3 inches wide by 9 inches tall. So us using the cardstock or the file folders, we'll just measure over 3 inches cut and then cut that by 9 inches. So we all have this piece. If you are using the punches, you will use the deep edge punch along this side and punch along that side. Those of us using dies, what we are going to do is, I'm going to use that one really fancy one I like to use, and it's this one. I'm going to make sure that I center this from side to side, and I'm going to make sure I have even amounts of spacing. So it might help is if you use a pencil so that you can keep yourself straight. Run this through the die cutter, and then what you're going to do is flip this around the other way. So if you need to use a ruler and do a light pencil mark to keep yourself straight wherever you were here, that will help, and then we can erase that later. So let's do that, and I'm going to show you what mine looks like. Those of you using the dies, this is what yours is going to look like. So what you want to do is cut from where the end of your trim is, straight down, and then straight up this way. And again, I'll show you what mine looks like. Before you start doing that, erase any of your pencil marks. So this is what you should have. And those of you that use the punches, let me show you an example. Here's an example of a deep edge puncher. So this is what you would have, something like this. Okay, let's get our piece. Now, because I want us to all have the same leftover pieces as far as what we do here, those of you that use the punch, you will make this cut, but then you will cut yours down, just so that we have the same leftovers here. So everybody, let's measure over 2 inches and cut. This is what I'm talking about. We all have this piece the same size. So put this in your reserves. Measure over 7 1/4 inches and cut. Put the small piece in your reserves. Now, for people who use the punch, what you're going to want to do is center this first. And once you have that centered, pinch and hold it, flip it over. Now keep pressure down in the middle there. And you will just wrap your edges around. You will apply glue, hold it down, and you will wrap this, apply glue. So what you're going to have, you'll have your band like this. So now what you're going to do is flip this over, line it up to how much you need. So for instance, use your pencil and then trim that strip. And then that strip here, you will glue that down to the middle. Okay, die cutters. With ours, we're going to attach ours as well. Make sure you are centered top to bottom. And you're going to do the same thing. Put pressure right down in there to keep it flat and keep most of the slack out of there. And tack ours down. Make sure it stays flat. And tack it down. So we will have this. Now it's going to bow up like that, but once we mount it in it, it's going to pull it back flush. So we can get like a folder or some mats in there. For this, we're going to need to get into our other die pack, which is the Classic Borders. And we're going to want to find that one we used before with the straight curved blade in there. That sounds like an oxymoron, actually. A straight curved. Okay, so all we're going to do is place it down like this on your page. Okay, and this is so that you can get it straight and right up there underneath. Maneuver this, and then what you can do to keep yourself is do the same thing. Make some pencil marks on your paper here. Sometimes it's easier to just make some marks and run that through the die cutter, and then what you're going to do is flip that over and do the same thing, and wherever that line was up here, you can make it up here, down here, and run that through the die cutter. So I'll show you what mine looks like, and sometimes it's not so easy to keep it exactly straight, but we'll see how I do here. So you'll want to erase your pencil marks, but now you can just cut up to release, and we'll see how I did here. And these leftover cuttings that we have off our dies, sometimes these work really good for like decorating on our things like that. All right. Let's place that down. That looks good to me. So once you have yours, let's glue that down. Now, one thing I still like to do is place a piece of cardstock back behind there to ensure that I don't get glue past any of the trimmings. So let's do that. Let's finish up this page. I'm just going to put a little glue on this chipboard piece. Put that right there. And I made a little bow. This page is complete. Let's flip it over, score tape around the back side, and mount it in our book. Let's move on to page 25. Page 25 and 26 is very simple, and we are going to complete it together. First, let's trim off this top piece. I'm going to turn this, measure over 7 1/4 inches and cut. Stick this one in our reserves. Measure over 5 1/4 inches and cut, and then measure over again 5 1/4 inches and cut. In your reserves, you will find this sheet. On the back is this where we have that trim. It goes from dark to light. So we're going to need to find another one of these pieces, and I will show you in just a moment. But what you're going to do is put this on your paper cutter, and just right here to the other side of this, cut all the way down, and I'll show you what mine looks like. So this is what mine looks like all the way down. Now I have the darker piece up here. Measure over 7 1/4 inches and cut. Apply glue and glue that down. Next, in our paper pack, we will find this sheet. On the back it's pink. Let's trim off that top piece. Turn yours upside down, and we're going to do this same exact thing. Just right to this side, we will trim. Now measure over 7 1/4 inches and cut. Apply glue to the back of this, but now the dark goes down along this side. Now cut 2 pieces that are 2 rows at 7 1/4 inches. And I'm going to place mine, glue mine down right like this so I can still see some of that border. And just like that. I've got mine glued down. Now once my bling has dried the glue underneath to keep it down, flip them over, score tape around the back of each, and mount those in your book. We are now on to page 27. We are on page 27, In your paper pack, you will find this sheet. On the back, it looks like this. Let's trim off that top part. I'm going to turn mine, measure over 7¼ inches, and cut. Stick this in our reserves. Measure over 5¼ inches and cut. Stick this in our reserves. Whoops. Flip this over. Let's put our score tape on it and mount this in our book. Page 27 is complete. Let's move on to page 28. Page 28, in your reserves you will find this long strip. Measure over 5¼ inches and cut. Let's turn this so that we're looking at it like this. Measure over 4 5/16 of an inch and cut. Apply your score tape and let's mount this in our book. In your reserves you will have this sheet. If you remember, we had cut off the side trim to use on a different page. So with this one, I'm just going to turn my page like this. Okay, where we're going to end up cutting, and I'm going to bring this up again, is right below this gold frame. We're going to put this on our paper cutter and cut down. But we only want to cut down to 5¼ inches. So grab your pencil, put the edge of your ruler where that is, where you can't see your frame anymore, and kind of make a mark there. So put this on your paper cutter and we are going to trim all the way down to that mark, and then we will trim over. And I'll show you what mine looks like. So this is what you should have. This goes back in our reserve. And what we're going to do is we're going to flip this around so the border is on top. But look where the top of your pocket is and line that up. And then down here, make a mark with your pencil. Now we can just trim this to fit. So this is what you should have now, and you should be able to lay this down and it should fit. Let's apply our glue and mount that. Page 28 is complete now. We have nothing else to add to it. Let's move on to page 29. We're on page 29, but I want to show you that I did replace the flower, the main flower on the cover of my album. I do have a cat named CL, and actually I have two. One's sneaky and he's older and he's passive and everything, but sometimes in my tutorials you may hear some scrambling around or playful acts in the background. That's CL. And to make a long story short, my neighbor had come over, my elderly neighbor, and she was telling me what kind of scrapbook that she needed for her daughter. And she's old-fashioned not old-fashioned, but what she thought I did was the 12 by 12 layouts, and you put them in the book. Well, my specialty are these. So I took this off my counter and I walked outside, showed her some examples of what mini albums were. And then when I had brought it back in, instead of putting it on my craft desk, because usually my cats don't come up here and they don't get on my counters in my kitchen, I had stuck this on a chair and walked away and did something else. Well, CL thought it would be nice and fun to get a hold of my main flower and play with it. Well, he destroyed it, and I was able to fix these little ones around here and everything, but he did tear apart my cover flower. So I did replace it. I added a little more color while I was at it. So in case you're looking and you see a different flower, that's what happened. And one thing I want to point out is when you're doing these mini albums, there's always a fix. If you make a mistake, perhaps you're a little crooked on a page, you can always add some thin lace to give the illusion of straightening out your page, or attach a butterfly somewhere over something that got ruined. You know, just different things you can do. For me, I just carefully plucked that old one off and I made a new one and I glued it back down. Okay, we are on to page 29, but I did want to point that out in case you're noticing, why is our flower a little more colorful now? Well, it's because CL. Alrighty, let's get our paper for this. In your paper pack, you will find this sheet. On the back, it's this. Let's trim off that top piece. Measure over 5 1/4 inches and cut. Put the large piece in our reserves. Let's turn this. Measure over 4 5/16 of an inch and cut. Let's flip this over. Set that to the side. Measure over 2 3/4 of an inch and cut. This leftover piece, let's put in our reserves. Alrighty, this one, flip it over, score tape around the back side. And we're going to mount this. Whoops, we'll be mounting it this way in our book. Let's set this off to the side, and we're going to do a trim piece over here. I'll put this off to the side. If you're using the file folders, open it up, and what you're going to cut is a 2 inch by 5 1/4 inch. If you're using regular cardstock, just cut that size of a piece. Those of you that are using the punches, you can use your 1/2 inch punch or your deep edge punch, whatever you like. Just punch across the long side. Those of us using dies, in our Classic Borders Basics, we will find this bracket, and then we'll also find the bracket that fits above. We're just going to center that like we've been doing and run it through our die cutter. Those of you that use the punches that have the straight across border, you'll do like we've done before. Just glue that right on down, and then you can glue this down too. Now, those of us that have that curve, what we're going to do is grab this, the straight curved blade, and it's easier for me if I lay it down, just in case I'm over to one side than the other, is to just kind of make sure that that's going to be center. And we're going to run this through our die cutter. I'm going to glue my piece to this. Might be easier for me that way. And then all I'm going to do is put a piece of cardstock back behind here, apply glue to this, and mount that. Now, those of us that did the curve, we'll be able to still see part of our ivory background to our pocket, and that is just fine. It's just a different look. You'll want to make a bow. I did clip off a little baby's breath that I'm going to just put right down there. And then I'm going to add a little glue here to my bow. Baby's breath is completely optional, so it will look good with or without. To cut those tails right off. This page is complete. Let's move on to page 30. In your reserves, you will find this sheet. On the back is this. So all we're going to do is measure over 7 1/4 inches and cut. The small piece goes in our reserves. Measure over 5 1/4 inches and cut. Alrighty, flip your page over, and what we're going to do is apply the score tape to this side. And this is the side that we're going to see, and it will match into our book really nicely. Either way, whatever you'd like. Let's work with this. In your reserves, you will find this sheet. And remember on the back we had done some cuts so that we could leave this. We're going to cut this out. And I'm just going to use my scissors for this. I'll put this back in reserves. And I should have my smaller scissors for this part, but I'll go with it. So this is what yours should look like. Grab some of your cardstock, or if you have the file folders. Now I have this crease here, so I'm gonna be placing this down. I'm gonna glue it down and then I'm gonna cut around it. So if you're just using sheets of cardstock, cut a piece the same size as this. This is what's going to reinforce, make this a little more sturdier when we put this in our book. So I'll show you what mine looks like. I'm just going to now put this on the paper cutter, trim this out, and then I will have a thicker piece. So this is what you should have when all said and done. Now we're going to apply some glue, but it's only going to be to the bottom, a thin layer, not all over. And then we're going to have this kind of angled off just slightly off the page. So I'm only going to need to come up a little bit. So right about here would be good, I think, for me. And just make sure that you press that down really good. So you flip it over and apply your score tape, and let's mount that in our book. Page 30 is complete. We are now on to 31. Wow, we're just about done here. What this serves as, really quick, is, I'm just going to grab one of these. You can slip back behind a photograph or a picture mat or perhaps a journaling card. And that's what that is. Page 31 and 32, we're going to do the same. Since we have to keep our book not so bulky, we're just going to do 2 pages that are identical, and then we will move on to the next. So all we're going to do is trim this off to start, and this is the paper, the green cream stripes on the back. It looks like this. Let's turn our paper, measure over 7 1/4 inches, and cut. Put this piece in reserves, and we've done this before, measuring over 5 1/4 inches and cut, measure over again 5 1/4 inches and cut. Flip these over, apply score tape, and let's mount these in our book. In your chipboard pieces, you will find this piece, and we're going to kind of do what we did before. I'm just going to add a little bit of glue right down at the bottom here, and I'm going to mount this so that I can still slip in something back behind when that's dried, like so. Page 31 and 32 are complete. Let's move on to page 33. In your paper pack, you will find this print on the back. It looks like this. Let's start off by cutting off that top piece. I'm going to turn this, measure over 7 1/4 inches, and cut. Put this in our reserves, measure over 5 1/4 inches, excuse me, and cut. In your small journaling cards, you will find Believe in Yourself, and let's ink around the edges with some brown or rich cocoa if that's what you have. Cut a piece of your scrap file folder or cardstock, and let's glue that together. Once you have your pieces glued together, we're going to add glue to the bottom underneath, and we'll just mount this like so. So you can still get larger mats in there if you want to, such as something like this. You can still get it in, and it will hold that there for you. This page is complete. Flip it over, score tape around the outside, 1 down the middle, 2 shorter ones, and we'll mount this in our book. This page is complete. Let's move on to our next page. In your reserves, you will find this print. On the back, it's this. Measure over 5¼ inches and cut. Put this piece in your reserves. Now turn that and measure over 4 5/16 of an inch and cut. Apply score tape and mount in your book. In your journaling cards, the large ones, you will find this. And I'm going to show you with my pencil where we're going to cut. I'll make a mark on mine. You see this trim, but just over you will see another light colored trim. We're going to cut on that side and that side. And I'll show you what mine looks like. When I bring this down, it will fit nicely going across. But what I do need to do is trim it up. So the same thing goes is I'm first going to trim right here. Lay your piece down now. Make sure you bring it to the top of your pocket there. Make a pencil mark and trim. Now one thing is when you're trimming down here, you're gonna be cutting off just right underneath the picture, but it will look just fine. So this is what mine looks like. I'm gonna apply my glue and glue that down. In your chipboard pieces, you will find this. Let's just add a little glue to the top. Bring it to the top of your page, over to the right, and you still will have a little over here showing. And glue that down. Make a bow, and we'll just glue that down right here. Make us another small bow. And I think I want to add it right here. Optional. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Page 34 is complete. Let's move on to our next page. We're on page 35. In your paper pack, you will find this print. On the back, it looks like this. Let's trim off that top piece. Measure over 5¼ inches and cut. Stick this in our reserves. Measure over 7¼ inches and cut. Stick this off to the side for page 36. Measure over 4 5/16 of an inch and cut. Apply your score tape. And let's mount that in our book. In your reserves, you will find this sheet. Measure over 5¼ inch and cut. Okay, let's turn that. Measure over 2 3/4 of an inch and cut. Let's glue that down to our pocket. In your chipboard pieces, you will find this. And I'm just going to add some glue here, and I'll have mine up just slightly. In your reserves, you will find this. On the back, it looks like this. What we're after is that bottle, and I'm going to cut mine out. I got my scissors to help. And I'll show you what mine looks like when I'm done. This is what mine looks like. Let's apply some glue and just glue that right on down. This page is complete. Let's move on to page 36. We set this off to the side for page 36. Flip it over, score tape around the back, and mount that in our book. Remember that frame we cut out the inside? Well, let's just do this together. Now, one thing for a backing behind this is you will want a 3½ inch by 5.5-inch piece of cardstock or your file folder. And that is what's going to slide in and out behind. Now, I do want to thicken this up. So after you make this, set this off to the side. Grab another piece of your file folder or scrap. I'm going to push this out of the way. And what we're going to do is strengthen this up a little bit so it isn't so thin. Because people will grab and you know, to pull in and out a photo, or if they want to change it out. So I'm just applying glue now to the back of this frame, and I'm just going to glue it right on down to a piece. Making sure my glue is all the way down there. Now I'm just going to cut out and around my frame to start. Okay, so once you have that, all we're going to do is take our craft knife and cut out this middle piece. And I'll show you what mine looks like as soon as I am done. So I've got mine cut out. This was what came out. I'll just put this in my reserves. Okay, so getting this to fit. Now, we're only, so that you can slide a photo in and out from the side to get one in there, which is going to be, we made this little mat, okay, is we're only going to apply glue, a thin, very thin line, to the underneath of this side and right down about this far, here and here. And once you have your photo in, then you can glue it down the rest of the way if you want. So I'm going to show you mine. Really thin line. If you get glue over in this area, you're definitely going to want to wipe it off before you place this. And my hand is shaking. Okay, so I'm just going to place this down. Make sure I'm not wiggling it around to move that glue around. And I'm going to let that dry for a moment. Mine is dry. Now on that 3.5 by 5.5 piece I had you cut, I actually had to trim mine down to 5.25 inches so that it would fit nice, because I misjudged that. So this should be able to just slide right back underneath, right like so, so that you can, you know, put a photo on here and slide it back behind. Now another thing is, what I am going to do is I'm just going to add on one of these little chipboard pieces so that I can grab at this just a little bit here on the side so that I can grab something. It's a little easier to get it in and out. And there it is. This page is complete. We are now on page 37. Page 37 and 38 we're going to complete together. Let's start off by trimming off that top piece. I'm going to turn mine, measure over 7.25 inches and cut. The smaller piece will go in our reserves. Measure over 5.25 inches and cut, and measure over again 5.25 inches and cut. Before we go any farther, let's just take care of flipping these over. Score tape around the back side of them, one down the middle and two on either side. Those of us using file folders, we're going to measure my openings over here. We're going to measure over 4 1/8 inch and cut. Those of you using regular cardstock, I will give you your measurements in just a moment. This is what you should have. I'm going to turn it, measure over 6 1/8 inch and cut. Okay, those of you that are working with regular sheets of cardstock, cut a piece that is 8 1/4 inches by 6 1/8 inch, and then you will score it in the middle like so. Now on this one, our opening is going to be over this way. In your journaling pack, you will find this print. Has that on the back, and we're going to glue that right on down to this. I've got glue on the back of mine. Remember, the opening is this way. And we'll just mount that and center it. Okay, flip it all the way over. Let's apply glue, but we're only going to apply glue the top, the bottom, and the side that opens up the back, so that we can have a little pocket here if we want it, going in this way. Let's find our paper for in here. In your journaling pack, you will find this. On the back is this. Let's apply glue to this and mount that in our little folder there. In your reserves, you will find this. Measure over 4 inches and cut. The larger piece goes in reserves. Measure over 6 inches and cut. Apply glue and glue that down. Cut 2 pieces of ribbon. Now on this one, cut them at about 11.5 inches. We can trim it down. What we're going to do is, and I'm just going to flip this right on over after looking at where my center is, and I'll just pinch that back around. Now we already have our score tape down there, so that was probably something I shouldn't have done. And I'm just going to use my little knife here and snip out a place. There we go. My bad. And there goes my phone. I'm just going to add a little glue and glue that back behind. Alright, so for this side though, I want it to come up at an angle. So I'm just going to kind of lay that down there to see where I want to be. And I think I'm going to go right about there. So I have that there. And I will pinch it over. And because I have the score tape, I'm going to have to do the same thing. So I'm going to make a mark with my pencil which way that's supposed to go. And my apologies. I was not thinking. I kind of changed gears there. And I'm just kind of, might be better if I just, there. Okay. Much better. I'll add a little glue so I can get it right through there. Okay. So, there we go. So what I want to do is to be able to tie this at an angle, whether I want to tie it here, probably right about here. Keep that straight as I can. And then I will cut off my tails that I really don't need, but not too short because it's a pain in the butt when you get your tails too short and then trying to tie something. Okay, so this one is our last page. This is the one that goes first, and we'll mount this one first before this so we can line up our sides. Stick this one off to the side. This one, we are ready to go. Let's remove our score tape and mount this in our book. We're ready to put this in. Remember, when you do this, stay clear of that hinge mark and just center that right on that last page and try to match the top to the top and the bottom to the bottom. The last thing I want to add is in our chipboard pieces, this. And I'm just going to add glue up behind the top only, so in case I have to get a corner of a picture back underneath. Page 37 and 38 are complete. Let's move on to installing our side closure now. So with the Dritz, you're going to get 3 in a pack. And I'm using the, I think it's the antique brass. And the two pieces we want are this. The first one is going to go right here. So you'll want to use your glue, and if you have a binder clip or a clamp, that will work perfectly. So just put a little bit of glue, a little bit. Alright, I'll clean that up in a minute. So when you place this, the idea to place it is you can grab the other side of your hook, and so long as you can get that in there still, in and out comfortably, you've got it in a good place. So I've got the glue on, but it takes a moment for it to grab. So that's where the binder clips or your clamps will come in handy. So just grab it and tack it down. In the meantime, let's work on this side of it. Let's get a ribbon. Okay, I got some ribbon that I want to use, and all I'm going to do is just feed it right in through the little eyes in here, little hook eyes. And I only need enough. I'm going to unclamp that. I only need enough. And remember, we still have some picture bets that we'll have to do, but I'm going to hold this down with my finger. But I don't want to cinch it super tight. That's not the idea. You just want it to be comfortably, and that should be right about there. That's all I need as far as my ribbon. So I'm just going to kind of pull it to loosen that. I don't need super long tails. So right about there, I'm thinking is where I need to be. And then once you know where that is, I like to use a little hot glue. I'm using a low temp, but if you need to make a mark on the underside of your ribbon where it's supposed to hit, do so. Okay. Looks like my bits is about done drying, but to be on the safe side, I'm going to clamp it a little bit longer. So I've got that like that. Make sure that you are glued down pretty good. I'm just going to flop over my little tails like so. But I want to grab a something out of my chipboard pieces, and I think this will work good. I'm going to go with this one. Decisions, decisions. For me, it's just easier to use hot glue because, sorry, I'm one-handed here holding this. It's just easier for me. And then if I want to pull my tails to the side, I can before it's completely. And I think I'll do it like that. Or you can have your tails out the side, whatever you'd like. Or you can all together just clip them and remove them. You know, either way, just like that. So let's take a look at the front of our album and what to do to cover that up if you don't like that. So I'm using 3, I'm going to do a little design on mine, but if you even have 2, you can glue one down here and one down here, and it does take time to dry. However, I have a third one, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do here with that. Something a little bit different. Place a little glue and slip that right in between that. And I will clean up the glue that just squirted out on me. And I'm going to grab a piece of cardstock to clean that up. I got crazy. And this glue that I'm using does dry clear because I buy the dry clear. Okay, and I'm not going to worry too much about that just yet. I have these, and each one of these, I'm not going to use that much glue. I'm going to just kind of put that around there. So one's going to go here, and the other is going to go on the other one. And it does, like I said, take time to dry. If you're finding your glue is not holding yours down after you've given it about 15 minutes to dry or so, then try a glue that will work with both. But that's how mine is going to look. And then when I come over here and clamp it, it looks nice. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. This one was a lot of fun, and it was quite a bit different for me to do with so many pages, but they were so easy. We were able to get this done in 2 parts. Honestly, when I first saw this album and how many pages, I didn't think I was going to be able to do this with 1 paper pad and still have enough paper left over for picture mats, for everything, especially on those ones that have the side pockets to slide in picture mats and whatever you want to do there. My next tutorial, and I'm going to give you a sneak peek here at what the main things I will be using. Let's set this off to the side. My next mini album is going to be an 8.5 by 6.5 with about a 3.5 inch spine. And look at that gorgeous paper. That is just gorgeous. But this paper is a 12 by 12, and it is a lot of fun. And also the ephemera pack that goes, the die cuts that go with it. And then of course there'll be some other things that I'll bring into it. But that is a sneak peek at the paper I will be using next time. So thank you for joining me, and if you have any questions, at the end here you will see my email address, and you can always email me or ask a question right underneath the video in the comments area. Happy crafting, everyone. I'll see you next time.